My job before any of this was to sit in a dish field outside Marrow Station and listen to frequencies nobody else thought were worth the power bill. Most of what came through the old chapel band archive was static, or somebody's dead relay talking to itself. Or twice a year, a real signal that turned out to be nothing, a maintenance ping, a calibration tone, a satellite clearing its throat before it died for good. I had been doing this for 6 years. I was good at it the way you get good at anything that nobody checks on, quietly, and without much to show for it. The hymn started showing up in week 11 of that posting. Same band, same hour, every local evening, a 4-part chant, thin with distance, riding a carrier wave so old the catalog still called it provisional. I didn't understand the words. I didn't need to. You learn the shape of a thing before you learn its meaning, and the shape of this one was need, not panic. Need has a different rhythm, slower, more patient. The rhythm of people who have already decided panic won't help them and are conserving what's left for something that will. I logged it as devotional traffic for the first month, because that's what the manual told me to call anything with that shape and no demand attached. There's a whole category in the regs for exactly this: religious overflow, harmless, archive and forget, and I'd filed 24 things under it over the years without a second thought. What made me come back to this one was the consistency. Devotional traffic drifts. People miss a night, change the hour, let a feast day bump the schedule. This hymn never moved. Same minute every evening for 11 weeks, the way you only keep a schedule when keeping it is the only thing left that you still control. Then I pulled the carrier specs and found out the band wasn't supposed to be live at all. It belonged to something called the Tidewatch Mercy Accord, Article 6, ratified between Earth and a Calvary successor government 141 years ago, back when we were apparently in the business of co-signing border relief treaties for people we'd never met. Earth's side of the accord had never been formally closed. Nobody had closed it. It had just sat there, drawing the smallest possible amount of power, listening, the way I was listening for 141 years. I requested the full text. It took 3 days to come back from archive, and when it did, Article 6 was 4 lines long. Any vessel or installation broadcasting recognized distress hymn traffic on the designated channel would receive a good faith response from either signatory, proportionate to the request, at the signatory's discretion. Proportionate to the request. The hymn wasn't requesting ships. It wasn't requesting anything I could point a weapon at. It was a chaplain, on a platform called Tidewatch Senna, asking whatever was listening, God's, ancestors, his own high command, anyone not to let his crew be forgotten. I want to be honest about what happened next because nobody ordered it. I wrote up a recommendation for a courier packet, unarmed, civilian flag, carrying nothing but the accord text and a formal notice of recognized signal under Article 6. My section chief signed off on it the way people sign off on things they don't expect to matter: fine, hold, take the quiet boat, don't start a war. I asked to go along as signals attaché, because I was the only one on the station who could read the hymn's cadence well enough to know when I was being lied to, and because some part of me wanted to know what 4 lines of treaty looked like landing on somebody who had stopped expecting any reply at all. Tidewatch Senna sat at the seam between 2 Calvary successor states that had spent 11 years fighting over a strip of drowned coastline neither side could actually use. It was a watch platform, not a fortress. A steel-end coral mast standing chest-deep in glare-bright water, its relief crew 3 months overdue, its supply line cut twice by weather, and once by a blockade nobody on Senna had been told about. The sun out there did not behave the way I expected. It came off the water sideways, white and relentless, so that even the platform's rust looked clean in it, scoured down to bright orange. Heat shimmered off the landing rail in sheets you could see through, and the water around the legs of the structure had that flat, hard shine that makes everything underneath it invisible and everything above it impossible to look at directly. There was nowhere to hide from how visible everything was. I understood, watching the courier's tender cross that flat, hard light toward the landing rail, why a crew that exposed might end up praying instead of calling for help. Calling for help assumes someone official is still listening. Praying doesn't. The chaplain met us at the rail himself, War Chaplain E.O. Senvith, narrow-shouldered, robe salt-stiffened at the hem, the kind of tired that has stopped being an event and become a baseline. He didn't ask who we were before he asked what we wanted, which told me everything about how many false promises had come through that channel before us. I gave him the document instead of an answer. I'd practiced saying it formally, in the cadence the accord specified, the way you're supposed to deliver recognized signal notice. I got 2 words into it before he held up a hand and asked me, very quietly, to just read it like a person. So I did. I told him Earth had heard his hymn for 11 weeks. I told him it had never been meant for us, and that we knew that, and that the accord didn't care whose name was on the prayer, only whose name was on the old paper underneath it. I told him the document in my hand obligated both factions fighting over that strip of coastline to formally relieve Tidewatch Senna's crew within 10 days or forfeit, standing under 3 other treaties his government still needed, and that the document had already been transmitted to both factions' command structures 40 minutes ago, with Earth's seal on it, before I ever set foot on his platform. He read it twice. He asked me once, not as an accusation, just as a man trying to get the facts straight before he let himself feel anything about them, whether we had understood that the hymn was not addressed to Earth. I told him we'd understood that from the first verse. He looked past me at the courier, small and unarmed and riding low in the glare, and said that he had stopped, around week 9, expecting an answer from anyone, and that he had kept singing anyway because stopping felt like agreeing with whoever had decided his crew didn't matter enough to relieve. He said it without drama. It was the kind of sentence a man says once he's already decided not to cry in front of strangers, and is mostly succeeding. I won't pretend the 10 days that followed were clean. The Eastern Compact dragged its relief order to the wire, arguing first that the accord didn't bind a successor state, then that it did but only for the drowned banner, then, finally, with 9 hours left on the clock, sending the order without an apology attached. The platform's other 3 crew, an engineer who hadn't slept properly in a month, a young watch rating who flinched at every radar contact, a second officer who'd taken to standing at the rail for hours doing nothing anyone could name, did not come off that platform transformed. They came off tired, blinking in transport bay light, carrying almost nothing, the way people carry themselves when relief arrives too late to undo what the waiting already did. One of them, the young rating, asked me on the tender ride out whether the channel would still be listening if it ever happened again. I told him I didn't know who'd be sitting my chair by then, but the dish would still be there, drawing its trickle of power, and that seemed to be the answer he actually wanted. Senvith stayed an extra 2 days to formally hand the chapel log to his replacement, because someone had to, and because I think he didn't entirely trust the platform to keep singing without him there to start it. On the last morning I asked him, mostly to have something to say, what he'd call what happened wrong number miracle treaty law working exactly as written for once. He thought about it longer than the question deserved. He said he didn't think it mattered what we called it, because the only thing the hymn had ever actually asked for was for someone, anyone, to still be listening, and as it turned out, someone had been. Not his someone, not the someone he'd been singing to. But the channel had been open the entire 11 weeks, on our end, drawing its quiet trickle of power, doing the one thing prayers actually need from whoever receives them. I told him I'd heard him. He said that was, in the end, the part that had been missing the whole time. Then he turned and went back to teaching his replacement the hymn's 4 parts, in case the channel ever needed using again, and I went back to my dish field and logged the file closed.